a constable, and then you went to be a sergeant, and then you went to be an inspector and a chief inspector, superintendent, and you worked your way up to being a chief constable. Now they have these student entries who've come to university. They've never been, they've never seen a police uniform, and they've never walked the streets. They haven't done their 2 years probation. They do a degree course at the police college, and all right, admittedly they will learn a lot of the scientific side and the technical side of policing, but then they come out and they're immediately attached to a police station as an inspector or chief inspector, and if they're an inspector they're pretty quickly made up to chief inspector and then superintendent, and because if you look at the proof of this, I think, is if you look at some of the chief constables that are actually on television nowadays. I mean, they laugh about they joke about the fact that the policemen are getting younger, but when you look at some of the chief constables, they are in their early 40s. Now, you cannot have a 40-year-old with the experience that they had in the old days, because the good policeman joined as a constable and worked his way through the ranks and worked his way up, but learned policing. And I think that these guys, these senior officers, and in fact I read a report somewhere in the week that in fact that there was more senior police officers than there were the youngsters, junior grade.
Talking about senior police officers, I had the good fortune to have an in-depth conversation with Sir Peter Fahey, who was the Chief Constable of Manchester, Greater Manchester, and the conversation was about information that the police needed to be able to do their job. And he was explaining to me, he said that police people have got this perception that police is about the relationship with society and criminals. He said it really has very little to do with that. That's about 10% of policing. The vast majority of policing nowadays is more related to social services. It's looking after. He said if somebody escapes from hospital, it's the police that deal with it. If somebody does something really bad that it's not a robbery, but it is perceived as a bad thing in society, the police deal with it. If you've got a lunatic walking down the road, the police deal with it. When you've got care in the community, where you've got people that really ought to be in institutions, the police deal with it. When people are drunk, on a Friday night, most of their work is dealing with people who are.
I don't know what your point is. I don't know.
The point is that we're talking about policing has changed, and our understanding of what policing is needs to be brought into the real world.
I think what he's saying is that the police are now expected to do a lot of the work that the social services wants to, because the social services now haven't got any manpower to deal with it. So that he's falls back.
So when police resources are so stretched, what I'm saying is when police resources are so stretched, it's no wonder that sometimes they have to prioritise. And the main thing that is causing us a problem at the moment is cybercrime. Cybercrime is the biggest problem that most people have got. You're much more likely to have your identity stolen than you are to be burgled.
Yeah, but it's all down it all remains down in the end to manpower and experience, I think. I mean, I go along with what Mike says about experience, but then it's the same in the army, isn't it? With you come out of Sandhurst, much the same.
Yeah, but the thing is, you come out of Sandhurst and you have a bit of a rough time for a couple of years, because you're not immediately promoted, and you're put as a young lieutenant in amongst professional soldiers, and you don't get an easy time. They call you sir, but that's about all,
Well, I call you sir.
I know, but that's it. I mean, I think this business of what Alan's trying to get over, the police are doing social service, and they've done it forever and a day.
No, doesn't it have?
Yes, they have. I mean,
I don't think it's the perception. When
domestic violence and all this sort of thing, there's been one of the
the manpower. This is the difference, isn't it? Then, and they haven't got the manpower now. So this is the big problem with this country, isn't it? Cut back. And we've got nothing left.
When you see a police programme on the television, it's very rarely about something related to mental health issues, or somebody who's drunk in the streets and causing a problem and having a fight, and all that sort of side of policing. It's never that. That's never what's on the telly. It's always, you know, some wonderfully sexy lady detective that solves problems by having a team around her.
That's television. I mean, don't get fooled into that.
You say that, but there was a series on the ambulance service in the West Midlands. Quite often they got their regulars, you know, the psychiatric cases or the drunks that called them out all within time, you know, 3, 4 times, 5 times in a night, and they couldn't go in because these people were dangerous, so they had to wait for the police to arrive, and sometimes it'd be 3 or 4 hours before the police would arrive. Of course, that at the same time is holding up the ambulance because he's got to stay there, he can't go anywhere else.
I think the police force, I think that it's a very, very difficult and fine line, because at the end of the day, I mean, when we were all youngsters, you know, and policemen plodded the streets, you know, and he might have done that for his 6-hour shift and all the rest of it, and really it was quite ineffectual and, you know, inefficient, albeit that the claim is that, you know, you see the policeman on the street so you feel safe and that, you know, but I mean, the policemen in those days, they gave out the rough justice themselves, you know, because if somebody was you know, standing out of line, they were taken around the back side and the back of their shed and given a bit of a seizure.
Don't you think that still happens at times?
It does happen at times. I mean, I've seen it happen. I saw it.
You remember you saying once?
10 years ago, you know. Here in Milton Keynes actually, but you know, I think it's
sometimes what it needs, isn't it?
It's a very difficult fine line to draw as to how you actually, because it's like employing the person in a major supermarket shop, you know, to stand around. You know, that's a pure and utter waste of money, isn't it? You know.
Well, that's one thing about Sainsbury's, but he's not there all the time. He's there sometimes, and you know why? You know, why is he here now, not another time? You know.
What do people like to see? I think people do like to see a presence, and down in Stoney there used to be a policeman who used to get on his bike and walk around. I don't know if we're allowed to name names, are we? Yeah, PC Faulkner. Now, I didn't know the guy very well, but there's a lot of cracking stories about him seeing something happen. So he gets on his bike and he chases after a car on his push bike, and then he just has a nice little word with the guy. Now, the thing is, everyone knew him. The local community knew him, and something that is totally lost is the fact of this little bit about community policing. And I think there's value in that. You know, these policemen used to know all the kids' names. And I think it does bring into another area which Alan will probably pick up on, and that is, well, things do change. There are not so many kids just playing in the parks and so on these days. There always seems to be a bit of an undertone of I don't know, violence and disruption or something, antisocial behaviour, whereas before, generally speaking, you go back 50 years, 60 years, and it was just messing around. That's what we called it. But I think that side of policing was really important, and I think that we need that again. Where I live on 2 Mile Ash, let's get a Bobby back on the beat, walking around 2 Mile Ash, visiting people.
Yeah, proper Bobby, not a plastic policeman.
Well, to a great extent, that has happened with the PCSOs. There are local PCSOs that do tread the local estate, and the police are aware that the majority view is that they would like more feet on the street, and that's their answer to it. It's cheaper than having a highly trained police officer who's got.
But the trouble is, I mean, this is a serious.
Yeah, of course, it's down to money.
This is a very serious point, because these people are dressed up as policemen. They look like policemen. Yeah. It's only until when you see on the back of them they have it sewn in there, they are police community support officers, but they have no powers whatsoever apart from issuing parking tickets. Now, to my mind, why don't you take these people off half a day a week and send them to night school or day school, you know, to learn policing, so that, all right, it might take them a 2-year, 3-year apprenticeship.
Many of them do.
They don't.
Many of them
don't. They don't.
There is a well-trodden path from being a PCSO to being a police officer.
There is a well-trodden path, exactly, but it is they're doing that off their own bat, and they are still not qualified. They don't, they don't go away and do a 2-week course to arrest people or whatever. A PCSO can't arrest anybody.
Anybody can arrest anybody.
Yes,
You've got to be very careful what you arrest people for, because the law is very strong on this. I can't remember what the terms is about citizens arrest, what you can and do and what you can't. But you're the one that ends up in trouble if you do make a citizen's arrest.
My advice to anybody is do not make a citizen's arrest, because you will be done for it. Because aside from
I think it's a question of common sense, isn't it? If you see somebody stabbing a child, you deal with it, don't you?
You don't arrest them. I mean, you might kick them and beat them up and all the rest of them, but you don't arrest them, because only the police.
So you'd say it's better to kick them than arrest them?
Oh yes,
yeah, okay.
Or take the knife out of their hand and knife them.
Just as long as I've got a good idea of where you're coming from on this one, Mike.
You've no idea where I'm coming from at all.
Well, no, clearly. I mean, your violence level this morning, everything you're talking about is kicking and punching and...
Well, it has to be.
You really are grumpy, aren't you?
I am grumpy, Kevin.
Yes. Yeah. Now, the thing is, policing. Right. You get it in all walks of life. Schools. Who were the policemen at school? The tutors, the teachers,
the prefects.
And you did something wrong, you got sorted out, and you knew about it. It's done. Signed, sealed, delivered in that moment. Okay, many times I've had the ruler over the hand or around the back of the legs, or even their big cane. And at the end of the day, is it any big deal? No, it hurt at the time. Okay, and that was it. I once got the slipper for tripping up someone in a game of rugby when I was 12 years old. Never played rugby before, didn't really know what it was all about. I was a footballer, tripped someone up, and that was it. I was off. Sorted out, waited, slipper, there you go, you do not trip people up. It's done, sorted, forgotten about, a big lesson learned by me, and away it goes. And maybe there is something to this, taking someone aside and giving them a little sort out. The only trouble now is that individual that you've just sorted out is going to come back with a knife. And he's going to sort you out. And
right. One last question on police before we bore all our listeners to death. Should they be armed?
They are. They are.
No, they have a truncheon, so they are
technically they don't have truncheons. They have these sticks,
okay, should they be armed with firearms?
They have taser guns, and they have immediate access to the fire support arms group. So,
but your average Bobby walking down Newport Pagnell High Street this afternoon will not have a gun in his pocket, and I'm saying, should he?
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone. I'm still. I've still mixed views on this. I think we're heading that way, and I think it's inevitable that they should be.
I think it is inevitable. I don't like the idea of it personally, but then again, I'm going to quote Alan here. Times have changed, we've got to keep up with it, and it's a sad indictment of our society that it's got to that stage, quite frankly.
It's interesting what Alan said a little while ago about the biggest, and it's true, that the biggest crime nowadays is cybercrime, and as he says, yes, we're all at some stage or another going to get hacked, or our identity stolen, or our money stolen out of banks and things like that, but again, this goes back to the fact of what you said, Kevin, about kids. I mean, in my day, you were a little horror because you knocked on somebody's door and you ran away, and that was knocked down ginger. Or this time of the year, you went out and you bought fireworks, and you would put a bottle, a banger in a bottle of empty milk bottle, and toss it off a block of flats or something. I mean, these were horrendous things that we got up to and did as kids. Nowadays, of course, the kids are not like that because they're sitting on their mobile phones and their PCs and all the rest of it, and they're learning how to hack in and to just muck up people's computers and steal people's car codes for their keys and things like that. It's
well, at our age we couldn't even get our phones to work.
No, we couldn't. I mean, I bought a new phone in the week, and unfortunately my granddaughter came around and showed me how to take how to put the SIM card in. Because
can I interject you?
Yeah, go on.
Legal and political aspect. This is a citizen's arrest. A person who makes a citizen's arrest could risk exposing him or herself to possible on all sorts of criminal charges, such as charges of false imprisonment, unlawful restraint, kidnapping, or wrongful arrest. If the wrong person is apprehended or a suspect's civil rights are violated, this is especially true when police forces are attempting to determine who is an aggressor.
Yeah. I mean,
you've got to be very careful.
Well, there was a classic case the other day, wasn't there? I can't remember what it was, but it was quite a serious case. And the perpetrator got off because the policeman who arrested him wasn't